So the Golden State Warriors are arguably the greatest team ever put together. The team currently has 4 healthy All-Stars, and they are currently waiting on a 5th All-Star to come back from injury. If they're signing DeMarcus Cousins in the last offseason, the Warriors could go out with 5 All-Stars, which I don't think has ever been done before. The Warriors have put together probably the greatest roster ever assembled, and it seems as though the Warriors could win 5-6 straight NBA championships if they could keep the core together. Even losing one of these players, it looks like they could still go out and win the NBA championship. They're that far ahead of the next best team in the NBA. In this video, I'm going to be doing a brief history of the Golden State Warriors dynasty, and I'm going to start it off from the 2009 NBA draft in which they drafted Steph Curry. So before we get into the video, I'd just like to say sorry for taking a 6.5 month break. If you guys don't know, I do have a gaming channel, link to that will be in the description, where I actually have been uploading pretty much every day. And I don't know, that channel was just doing really well, so I decided to stick with that. And I'm currently back in college this year. I took a year out last year, and I just don't have the same time as I had. I kept meaning to bring this channel back, but unfortunately I just never really had the time. But I've got a plan. So for the next month, the month of November, I'm planning on uploading 4 to 5 videos while using the rest of the month to plan out as many videos as possible. And you guys know what that means. Even though we haven't uploaded a video since April, I am going to attempt to do daily December again. Yep, I'm going to attempt to do that. The channel saw a lot of growth, and to be honest, I really enjoy doing it. And I'm just hoping that if I can get the 4 to 5 videos out in November, I'll have the motivation to start making videos again for this channel, and I will do whatever I can to get a video out a day in the month of December. So anyway, now let's get on to the video. So as pretty much everyone knows, the Minnesota Timberwolves passed on Steph Curry twice in the first round, drafting 2 point guards in the 2 picks ahead of him. They took Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn. Rubio, understandable, because he was projected to go like number 2 or 3 in that draft, and he actually fell to the Timberwolves, so no way were they passing on him. Johnny Flynn was a bit questionable. But anyway, in that season, Monte Ellis had probably his best scoring year in the NBA, averaging 25.5 points per game. And Steph Curry had a great rookie year, 17.6 points per game and shooting 44% from 3. However, even with this backcourt, the team only won 26 games. And realistically, a backcourt of Monte Ellis and Steph Curry isn't really going to be defending anyone too well. And with 26 wins, they ended up with the 6th pick in the 2010 NBA draft. And surprisingly enough, even though they had a center, Andres Biedrins, who was their starter and started even that year, and they didn't have a wing defender, to be completely honest, they actually passed on Paul George, who would have fit their roster perfectly, and drafted Ekpe Udoh, who was the EuroLeague Final Four MVP a couple of years ago, and has been in and out of the league since being drafted. And in that offseason, they also had a big free agency signing. They signed David Lee, who the season before was an all-star with the New York Knicks. Also, one major thing was that they had Jeremy Lin on the roster, and while a lot of people think that that's absolutely irrelevant, the fact is that they got him the year before Linsanity happened, and had Linsanity happened in Golden State, it would have been hard to give him up, and it also would have taken away a little bit from Steph and Curry. Maybe Lin would have been promoted to the starter, Steph on the bench. So in a way, the Golden State Warriors were lucky that Linsanity didn't happen when they had him. But the team improved to 36 wins and ended up with the 11th pick in the NBA draft. And with that 11th pick, they picked the other Splash brother. They picked Klay Thompson. In the 2011-12 lockout year, Steph Curry only played in 26 games. David Lee also missed a few games, but Monte Ellis had a solid year. He dropped 48 points in a game in February and was actually the Western Conference Player of the Week for the week ending March the 11th. 2 days later, on March the 13th, after winning Western Conference Player of the Week, Monte Ellis was traded for Andrew Bogut, who had missed the rest of the season through injury. In the lockout year, the Golden State Warriors only won 23 games. But the team was going in the right direction. Just before the 2011-12 season, due to Curry's injury history, they signed him to a bargain 4-year, $44 million deal, which is probably the best deal in best contract in NBA history. He was making an average of $11 million a year, and during that contract, he won not 1 but 2 NBA MVPs, including being the only unanimous MVP in NBA history. And in the 2012 draft, they also managed to draft 3 key players to the Dynasty. Even though there's currently only one of them there, all 3 of these guys were key players to the beginning of the Dynasty. They drafted Harrison Barnes in the first round, Barnes was meant to be the biggest pickup of all these, came straight in as a starter, but it was actually the first guy they picked in the second round that became an all-star. They picked Draymond Green in the second round, and he actually didn't play too much as a rookie. They also drafted Festus Ezeli, who acted as a good backup for Andrew Bogut during a lot of the initial part of the dynasty. After barely playing the year before, Steph Curry played 78 of the 82 games and averaged 23 points per game. David Lee was also back to his best, and he was actually an all-star in 2013. And Andrew Bogut was back from injury for the end of the season and the playoffs. The Warriors went on to beat the Denver Nuggets in the first round of the playoffs, who a lot of people thought were a dark horse to win the NBA championship that year, after having a great regular season and their coach George Karl winning Coach of the Year. The Warriors then lost to the Spurs in 6 games, who lost in 7 in that year's NBA Finals to the Miami Heat. But a big change in Golden State basketball happened that season. Regardless of the record, regardless of their playoff success, this was Curry's first full season with Mark Jackson as the head coach. Mark Jackson was the first coach of the Warriors to really embrace the three-point shot. Even though Curry shot a higher percentage in his first 2 years in the league, Curry went from shooting 4.9 threes a game to 10.2 a game. Klay Thompson also raised his three-point attempts to over 9 threes a game, which is incredible as a second option from the three-point line. Steph and Klay shot nearly 20 threes a game combined, and the 2012-2013 season was the beginning. It was the coming out party of the Splash Brothers, and it cemented the Warriors as one of the teams to beat in the future. But even with this, at this stage, no one really expected the Warriors to be a contender over the next few years. In the 2013 offseason, the Warriors made a huge move. They got Andre Iguodala in a sign and trade. So people say Kevin Durant was a snake for joining the Warriors after losing to them in the playoffs. Iggy literally did the same thing 2 years earlier. But by coming to the team, Andre Iguodala pushed Harrison Barnes to the bench, and Barnes did not have the best second year in the league. In the 2013-14 season, even though Iggy didn't average that many points, he averaged less than 10 a game, he was still a key contributor to the Golden State Warriors team, who were even better than the year before, with 51 wins. Klay Thompson went up to 18 points a game, David Lee stayed at 18 points a game, and Steph Curry had his first All-Star year in the NBA, averaging 24 points per game. The Golden State Warriors faced off against the LA Clippers in the first round of the playoffs, but unfortunately lost in 7 games. After losing this series, the Warriors fired head coach Mark Jackson. So this is going to be the second time so far that we've seen something that should have been a disaster for the Warriors, helping them go towards a dynasty. First was Steph Curry being injured early in his career, which allowed him to sign for a lower contract. And this loss in the playoffs led to the Warriors firing the guy who realistically started the whole momentum towards what we see as the Warriors today. So the 2014 offseason was honestly, the only word I can describe it was pure luck. But it was the most important offseason for the Golden State Warriors dynasty that we see today. First of all, they signed Leandro Barbosa, who'd barely played for the Phoenix Suns the year before. They also signed Sean Livingston, who even though he had a good year the previous year with the Brooklyn Nets, nobody really expected him to be a game changer. The Warriors also missed out on their first choice for a head coach in Stan Van Gundy and ended up getting Steve Kerr, their second choice, which again is another incredible decision. Steve Kerr has proven to be one of the best coaches in the NBA. Also, it was looking like at one stage they were going to make a trade for Kevin Love. However, the Warriors were reluctant to include Klay Thompson in the deal, and I don't know how true this is, but I did read online that there was a proposed deal to send Klay Thompson to the Minnesota Timberwolves, except for the fact that the Timberwolves refused to give them their number 13 pick in the draft that year, who ended up being Zach LaVine. Even though LaVine ended up being a great player, with the fact he was a point guard coming out of college, there's no way the Warriors would have taken him. So the Warriors definitely wouldn't have gotten great value out of the 2014 number 13 pick in a draft that honestly was very disappointing. So in the end, the Warriors had kept pretty much the same roster as the year before it lost in the first round of playoffs. They just made a coaching change and signed 2 bench players that people didn't realize were going to be as good as they were. They went through preseason, people still didn't realize quite how good they were, and then probably the most important thing that happened in this, I'm going to still call it the offseason, was David Lee, their 18 point per game scorer, getting injured. By David Lee getting injured, it meant that Draymond Green went into the starting lineup. Draymond was an energy guy in his first 2 years in the league. No one ever thought he was going to be an all-star, and no one ever thought he was going to be the driving force of arguably the greatest team of all time. And also going into the season, Andre Iguodala, who had been an all-star 2 years previously, decided to move to the bench, which allowed Harrison Barnes to start. Iguodala became one of the best bench players in the NBA, and the team ended up going 21-2 through the first 23 games until they lost to the Memphis Grizzlies. And honestly, that season the Grizzlies were the biggest threat to the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference. Steph Curry won MVP, although his stats were barely better than they were the year before. Both Steph Curry and Klay Thompson were both All-Stars. They won 67 games. And in the playoffs, they swept the Pelicans in the first round, which was to be expected. The Pelicans were a young team. However, in the second round against the Memphis Grizzlies, they went down 2-1. And the Grizzlies were expected to give this Warriors team a lot of trouble, with guys like Tony Allen, with guys like Marcus Gasol, Zach Randolph taking them down inside. And Mike Conley had a really good year as well. However, after going 2-1 down, the Warriors responded by blowing them out in the next 3 games to win in 6. They easily beat the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals, and then they ended up beating the LeBron and Dellavedova-led Cleveland Cavaliers in 6 games. After winning the NBA championship in 2015, they made 2 massive moves in the offseason. And I'm not talking about trades, free agency signings, but they managed to give Draymond Green and Klay Thompson contract extensions. They signed Draymond Green to a 5-year deal and Klay to a 4-year deal. Both of these guys signing contracts specifically in this offseason allowed for what happened at the end of the season. The Warriors start the season winning their first 24 games. They didn't lose until the 11th of December where they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks. They were 48-4 at the All-Star break, won 54 straight home games, and ended the season with the NBA record 73-9. Steph Curry's MVP season is seen by a lot of people as the greatest single season in the history of basketball. And I know the majority of my fans watching are from America, so you guys get to see basketball all the time. But as an Irish person, it was crazy seeing what Steph Curry was doing every night. And obviously, as someone who watched a lot of basketball, it was just something that I did. But the fact that there was guys who never watched a game of basketball in their life watching Steph Curry night in, night out, watching what he was doing, it was just incredible. And I know a lot of people like to give Steph Curry hate because he played in the playoffs injured that year and really kind of underperformed in the finals, but Steph Curry's 2016 season is still the greatest individual season I've ever seen. In the playoffs that year, the Warriors actually beat the Rockets without Steph Curry. Yep, their unanimous MVP wasn't playing and they beat the Rockets. They then went and beat the Blazers 4-1. However, we're 3-1 down against the Oklahoma City Thunder, who looked to be their biggest threat. The Thunder had beaten the San Antonio Spurs in the previous round, who'd won 67 games that year, and honestly looked like they were going to beat the Warriors. However, the Warriors came back to win the series after being 3-1 down, and then the NBA Finals, the Warriors had a 3-1 lead against Cleveland Cavaliers. But we all know what happened from there. Draymond Green gets suspended for Game 5, Andrew Bogut misses Game 6 and 7, LeBron gets the block, Kyrie hits the shot, and the Cavaliers win the 2016 NBA championship. The 2016 offseason was a weird one. There was a new TV deal, and the Players Association negotiated it so that the salary cap wasn't gradually increased, that the entire increase was in one go, meaning that 2016 free agents earned way more than they should have. Timofey Mozgov was earning $16 million a year. Luol Deng was earning nearly $20 million a year. And this meant that the Warriors' contracts of Draymond Green and Klay Thompson the year before ended up being 2 of the biggest bargain contracts in NBA history. This, along with Steph Curry still being on his deal that would only pay him $12 million in the 16-17 season, meant that the Warriors could sign one big-name free agent to go along with their 3 All-NBA players that they already had. And somehow the Golden State Warriors managed to get Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant would not have joined had they won the NBA championship the previous year. I think he's even said that. And the funny thing is that looking back on it, every single bad thing that happened to the Golden State Warriors ended up being a positive. Everything that looked like it was a negative ended up being a massive reason why they ended up having so much success. But in the 16-17 season, they didn't start off the best, to be completely honest. They got blown out in the first game by the San Antonio Spurs. But they did finish the season really, really strong with a 67-15 record. And I think at one stage during the season, it was looking like they weren't even going to get the 1 seed in the Western Conference. And it was looking like at one time that the San Antonio Spurs were going to give them a run for their money in the playoffs. The Warriors had 4 All-Stars this year, and Draymond Green ended up winning Defensive Player of the Year. Towards the end of the regular season, KD picked up quite a bad injury, and just like everything before it, this ended up being a positive for the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry didn't have the best season up to that point. After his unanimous MVP year, he was struggling trying to get Kevin Durant involved in the offense. But without Kevin Durant, Steph seemed to get his mojo back. Steph was playing as good basketball as he'd ever played, and the Warriors ended up having a great end to the year. And then as soon as they go into the playoffs, KD's back. The Warriors end up sweeping the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and then come up against the San Antonio Spurs in the first round. The Spurs were expected to give the Warriors a run for their money, maybe even beat them. And in game 1 in Golden State, the Spurs were in control. And then Zaza happened. I'm not going to go over this too much, but we all know Zaza put his leg under Kawhi Leonard when he was landing. Kawhi Leonard was already carrying an injury, and that pretty much prematurely ended Kawhi Leonard's stay in San Antonio. In the NBA Finals, the Warriors win the first 2 games at home and are down in Game 3 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. At the very end of the 4th quarter in this game, with the Cleveland Cavaliers leading, LeBron James draws in 3 defenders, kicks the ball to one of the greatest catch-and-shoot players of all time, Kyle Korver, who can't hit the shot. Kevin Durant, their new free agent signing, the guy who up to this point right here, people questioned whether they really needed Kevin Durant, especially with how well they played without him, dribbles down the court, pulls up in LeBron's face, and he hits the 3. The Golden State Warriors win Game 3 and end up winning the finals in 5 games. Last season was a strange one for the Golden State Warriors. They didn't really do much in the offseason before the season started. They signed Swaggy P. Obviously, they still had JaVale McGee from the previous year, still had Zaza. But the Warriors only won 58 games and were not even the 1 seed in the Western Conference. Steph Curry missed 30 games, but it was all looking good in the playoffs. They quite easily won the first 2 rounds and were ahead against the Houston Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. However, then Andre Iguodala went down to injury, and the Rockets actually took a 3-2 lead against the Warriors. But for the Rockets, arguably their best player, CP3, Chris Paul, went down as well. The Warriors then went on to win 6 playoff games in a row, easily beating the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. And then this last offseason, 2018, the Warriors somehow signed DeMarcus Cousins for the vets minimum, but you guys all know that. And from what we've seen so far this season, Steph and Kevin Durant may be the greatest 2 players to ever be on the same team as each other. So anyway, that's the video. I know this is going to be a bit of a longer video, but it's something that I kind of want to do. I kind of want to do more videos like this, because looking for obscure basketball stories is really difficult. And researching things like this, seeing all the ways in which the Warriors progressed through the years, and also seeing things like the fact that every single negative that happened to the Golden State Warriors during the build of this dynasty ended up somehow being a positive. Everything that appeared to go wrong at the time, looking back on it, ended up being a big reason why they were able to put all this together. And it shows. Even though a lot of people talk about how good the Warriors front office is, that so much of this has been luck-based. If the Timberwolves pick Curry, this doesn't happen. If in Curry's 2nd year, Linsanity happens, the Warriors dynasty doesn't happen. If Curry doesn't get injured in 2012, this dynasty doesn't happen. If they got their first choice in coaches in Stan Van Gundy, it doesn't happen. If David Lee doesn't get injured, this dynasty probably doesn't happen. If they win the 2015-16 NBA championship, they don't sign Kevin Durant, and who knows what would have happened the next season. If Kevin Durant hadn't gotten injured the next year, who knows how team chemistry would have been, if they would have ended up losing to the San Antonio Spurs. If Chris Paul doesn't go down, do they beat the Houston Rockets? So with all of that, it just shows, no matter how good a front office is, to form the Warriors, to form a team like this, to form the greatest team ever assembled, it's as much luck-based as anything. And even if you have the best front office in history, I don't think this will ever be replicated, because you need almost everything to go your way, which is not going to happen again. So guys, anyone who's hating the Warriors, enjoy it while it lasts, because this is going to be the greatest basketball team we all see for the rest of our lives. So anyway, that's the video. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.